Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
There's these people, well, bots, not people, that go and fish for emails on the internet. And what they do is, so someone, probably overseas, signed up for a Netflix account using my email address in the hopes that I would finish the subscription, submit my credit card,
and now they have free Netflix.
Now they have free Netflix because they have my account information.
It's crazy.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
I'm Josh in Toronto.
And I'm Skip in Montreal.
In today's episode, Pedro Martinez,
Dennis Martinez,
and Jeff Treadway.
But first, a few good suggestions.
Okay, Skip, so I was listening to our last episode, which I do all the time, and as I've mentioned to you, I pick up things when I listen to the show that I didn't pick up when we actually do the show. So maybe that means I'm not focused enough when we're actually doing the show, but that's a whole other story. But
I have to admit, the same thing does happen to me also. I listen to this, and I listen to the episode back, and I'm like, when did Josh say this? It happens like often. It's kind of weird.
So I said something on last week's episode, and you didn't even bat an eyelash. Like you just went right past it as if it wasn't a big deal.
It was, what was it? It was something funny.
It was that I mentioned Instagram TV.
Oh, yeah.
And you should have said to me, how do you even know what Instagram TV is?
I was about to say that. I just didn't want to embarrass you, Like, I didn't want to put you on the spot because I know that you sometimes have trouble wrapping your head around, like, all the social media platforms. And sometimes I tell you, check out this video. And then you're like, where did you get this? I'm like, on so-and-so's Instagram story. And then sometimes I feel like I have to explain to you, like, how to get to someone's Instagram story. So I didn't want to get any deeper on Instagram TV.
So I know what Instagram TV is, and I know what Instagram stories are, but the problem with Instagram stories is that they disappear after a certain time. So you can tell me to go watch something, but it might not be there when I go watch it.
Yeah. But there are some people that will sort of archive their Instagram stories, and you can see them it's called highlights. So, but I mean, that's up to the person whose story. But anyway.
Like you sent me one this week and you told me to go watch, and when I went to go watch, I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it was gone already. I know. I realized that when I told you about it.
Anyway.
So what else is going on other than looking at Instagram?
Well, I actually haven't looked at Instagram at all, but you were full of good ideas last week.
Really?
Yeah. So let me just tell you, because you always give suggestions and whatever, and half the time I don't even listen to what you're saying. But I actually listened to you this time, and
yeah.
I there's 3 things that you said last time that I did this week.
Oh my God, let's hear it. This is big.
One of them was you told me about SiriusXM and how it's free, so I subscribed. And so I've been listening to it, not every day, but some days.
I believe it's free till May 15th.
Actually, I had to sign up for some reason when I went on the website.
Yeah, you told me about this.
But... And so when I did sign up, like I didn't have to pay or anything. It says you have 2 months free. So that actually is going to take me until like June 15th.
That's great. Okay, good.
But anyway, the one thing I don't like about SiriusXM, so obviously I like to listen to alternative music. They have like 12 different alternative stations. I don't know which one to listen to.
I found that there's so much like repetitive. The channels are a little bit repetitive. They're almost the same. Yeah, but there are a bunch of alternative. There's like a specific 90s alternative. I forget what it's called.
There's also, you told me about the Tragically Hip station. I found 2 different Tragically Hip stations. I'm not sure which one you were referring to.
I think mine is channel 145.
I don't know what mine is.
Anyways, yeah, but you know what happens? I feel like I don't know how it works. I'm just learning this too, just like you. There's like official channels, and then there's other ones that are like basically just like playlists.
Yeah, I noticed that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Some of them don't even have a number, like a channel number.
No, exactly. It's just like, oh, this playlist. And then it's like, okay. But then you're going to... I did talk to someone who actually subscribes to satellite radio, and they have for years, and she said that there's a lot of stuff that's very repetitive. On some of the channels, you hear the same stuff over and over, so. But that's just for music. I mean, there's many people that subscribe for, like you said, the live sports or the talk radio, the news, all that stuff. So, so that was one thing. You told me one thing. You listened to my advice. What were the two other things?
So I watched the show Unorthodox.
All four of them.
Well, there's only 4 episodes, right? So
yeah,
I didn't find the you said there's a 5th one, the making of. I didn't find it. I'll look for it again. But anyway,
you have to go in the Netflix. In the Netflix, you have to look at like the others and trailers or something. It's there somewhere.
Anyway, it was great. I really, really liked it. It made me very angry. The show made me very, very angry. And also, I learned some things that I didn't even know about Hasidic Jews. I'm Jewish, and I should know these things, but I didn't even know them.
Well, the thing is, like, and actually, when I listened back to our episode, and I'm sorry if we're going to get into the religious aspects of the show, we never talk about this stuff, but I guess that's what this Q life has done to us.
Q life, is that like a short for quarantine?
Yeah. At work, we have a Slack channel. You know about Slack?
I do.
At work, we have a Slack channel called Q Life. Anyway, so that's why I said it. So, so you mentioned like that you used to work in the bank, and you asked out this Hasidic Jewish girl a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
So I did research on that specific Hasidic community in Brooklyn that they show in the show, right? Mm-hmm. And that's even way more Orthodox than the community here in Montreal or in Toronto.
Right, because on the show, they wouldn't let any girl go to the bank.
Yeah, there's another. I told you there's another show called One of Us, which is it's a total documentary. It's not a dramatization, and they explain the rules. They're not allowed to take their kids to the public library. They're not allowed to. It's like they can't have any access to like the secular world.
Did you know they're not allowed to have smartphones?
Yeah, they talk about it. They said you have a kosher phone, right? I had to look up what's a kosher phone, and basically it's a flip phone. It's a phone that has just like talk and text without access to the internet. Mm. Yeah. In the other in the documentary that I mentioned, there's the kid who's 19 years old, and he's like, I didn't know how to use Google. How do you teach yourself how to use Google? You can't Google how to use Google if you don't know how to use Google.
Right, but think about the first time you used it. You figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah, well, but the thing is, I had like my whole life to have different experiences and to sort of self-teach me intuitively what to do. Imagine you're completely sheltered, and then all of a sudden it's like, go do this, and you're like, what is this? Like you never even seen a computer. Like it's quite odd. Anyways, what's the third thing?
Well, anyway, that show was excellent, and I just wish they would have gone on longer to see what happens next. That's the only thing I was upset about.
I agree, yeah.
And then the third thing, I started watching Ozark because of you.
There you go. Finally, you're on the Ozark train. What do you think about it?
Well, I've only watched season 1, and it's great.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about season 2 yet, obviously, so I don't want you to tell me anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's more of the same. It's more of the same.
So much happens in season 1. It's like, how does all that happen in one season?
Yeah, it's great. It's such a good show. Like, and anybody who's not watching it, like I said, we're in the Q life. Just like, this is the time to watch it. There's 3 seasons. They're not long seasons. They're like 10 episodes, right? 10, 12. You can. That's a day. You can do that in a day.
So, but here's my question, because you have kids, you have teenage kids.
Yeah.
Do your teenage kids talk to you the way the kids on Ozark talk to their parents?
I don't think any kids talk to their parents the way any kids do on any TV show. No?
I don't know, because I don't know how that daughter gets away with what she says. Well,
I mean, she's I don't know how old is she supposed to be in the show, 16 or 17? Right?
15.
Yeah.
In season 1.
I mean, like, obviously they're they're like I said, I don't think any kids talk to their parents in real life the way the kids do on TV. Kids on TV are always way more mature, way more educated, way more sassy, way more, it's like everything times 100. But also Charlotte in the show is not a regular kid. I mean, she's 15 years old, and she's been forced into like facing sort of the cold reality that, her parents are working for criminals, and, like she knows what's going on, like.
But also the younger brother.
Yeah.
Like, he gets someone to buy him a rifle and just starts using it like it's like a Lego.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's maybe the state of Missouri. Who knows what the gun laws are like? In Texas, you probably get a gun when you have your bar mitzvah.
It's a little too easy to get a gun. It's a little ridiculous. Anyway, so those are the three things: Sirius XM radio, Unorthodox, and Ozark.
Do you actually have any sports this week, or we're gonna go completely?
I have sports, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that later because it's not as important. I have to tell you that. So how I had a story about getting in touch with Netflix last time.
Oh yeah. So there's a follow up?
No. This is a different story. Nothing to do with that. I had to get in touch with Bell Canada this week.
Oh my.
So the cable package that I have, I've had it for so many years, you can't get this cable package anymore.
I'm in the same situation.
And I keep it because it's a good cable package, and if I let it go, I'm never going to get it back.
Right.
So the thing is, though, I don't know, I guess Videotron does the same thing, but every 3 months, it seems, Bell just increases my bill. They just charge me more for the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was getting frustrated, and I called them this week, and I said, last month you raised my mobility monthly fee by $5. This month you raised my internet fee by $5 a month. And next month you've already told me that you're going to raise my television fee by $5 a month. That's a total of like $15 in the span of 3 months. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to mention, they used to give you these bundle savings if you had all these services from the same company. And the bundle savings used to be $10, which is decent. It's going down to $3.50. So what's the point of having the bundle?
So what did they say about this?
Well, they've got their prepared statement. It's just some guy or girl that's answering the phone. Like, what are they going to say, right? They have this thing, and you could tell that he was reading it off the page. So,
someone told me, I'll let you finish, but I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on this.
So anyway, I said, I just don't understand all these increases, and now the bundle that I used to have is going from $10 to $3.50. It's not worth it for me. And then he's like, well, what channels do you watch? So I told him I watch all the sports channels. That's pretty much it. Of course, ABC, NBC, CBS, and the sports channels. And he's like, how much do you use the internet? I'm like, not that much, actually. He's like, okay, let me put you on hold for a second. Puts me on hold. He comes back. So here's what I can do for you.
Yeah, okay.
I felt like I was talking to a used car salesman.
Yeah, you are.
So here's what I can do for you. So he gives me this option. It basically has almost all the channels that I want. Like, I'd lose the MLB network, which, to be honest, do I really need that right now? No.
Actually, the last month is when I've watched the most MLB network ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would lose that, but I'd save $27 a month, which is nothing to sneeze at.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, let me think about it, whatever. I thought about it for a few days, and I actually took the deal yesterday. I agreed to it. So now I've lost that package that I've had for almost a decade, which is actually not such a big deal because I get everything that I want in this package. They have this new thing with Bell now where you can get all the sports channels in one package. It used to be, if you wanted the TSN channels, it was one package. If you wanted the Sportsnet channels, it was a separate package. And now you can get them all in one. So
they realize they have to do this. Otherwise, people are just going to cut the cord completely.
Exactly. And this is what I was getting to. Thank you for mentioning this. It hit me. It struck me. I don't know why it took me till now to realize this. If there's ever a time that you were going to cut the cord, now's the time to do it because there's no live sports. All the shows that you watch, like if you watch any weekly shows, most of them are over for the season or
right.
ending soon.
Right.
And anything that you watch, you can probably get some other way.
You're absolutely right. Maybe I should think about this because I've been talking to you about this for years.
You have.
Maybe now is the right time. Live sports is the only thing that keeps me on cable.
So anyway, I still do have all the sports channels, and like I said, I lost MLB Network. I can get it back. That's the beauty of this new package. If I want just one channel, I can get that one channel, and adding it is not going to put me over what I was paying before. It's still going to be less. So
this dilemma about how to save money on cable, right? It's something that I've thought about like often over the years, right? How to save money on your cable bill. And I've asked 2 or 3 people who I really trust that know a lot about this stuff. And there's only one way to truly save money. And you could save a lot of money on your cable and your internet if you do one thing.
It's just a public service announcement.
You've got to switch providers almost every year. You've got to be willing to do that because they offer crazy stuff for new subscribers. So what is your recourse when you call Bell and you say, you're screwing me, you're raising my rates? They know they're raising their rates. That's their whole method of operation. They get you and then they raise your rates. So if you would go on the phone with Bell and say, look, cancel my subscription, cancel everything. I'm going, well, I mean, you don't have Videotron where you live, but like you could say, I'm switching everything to Rogers, or I'm switching everything to Shaw, or whatever your competitors are. For me here in Quebec, I can go call Videotron and say, I'm switching everything to Bell, whatever. And then you're going to get a crazy deal. You're going to save you could save hundreds of dollars a year, maybe even $1,000. Who knows how much? But you have to be willing to like make that switch, like, which is a little bit involved for a lot of people, including myself, because I never have done that.
It is a pain.
So that's
but
my
yes,
2 cents about cable companies.
No, if you do that, you're absolutely right, because new customers get crazy good deals, but you do have to switch at least once a year. Sometimes you have to do it every 6 months, which is a real pain.
Yeah. Because a lot of times the offers that they're doing is like the first 3 months you get this, right? And then they start to change things.
One last thing. You remember I told you that games on RDS were being blacked out here?
Yeah.
So, and not just like live games, but games from like 5-10 years ago were being blacked out.
Yeah.
So I got in touch with RDS also for this reason.
Oh my God, you're so crazy. When you have too much time on your hands, you're dangerous.
You're Batman.
Yeah, I am Batman.
I am dangerous. But like I wanted to know, it was bugging me. And yes, I have time, so I might as well do it, right? Because I'm not going to have time like this ever again.
Yeah.
And so I sent them a message, said, look, I know that Montreal Canadiens games are supposed to be blacked out in Toronto. I get it. But like, why is this, there was like a half-hour documentary about Sylvie Fréchette. Why is this blacked out? And then I gave a bunch of other examples of things that were being blacked out that had nothing to do with the Canadiens and nothing to do with hockey.
Wow.
And so they actually got back to me and they said that the rule is anything to do with hockey has to be blacked out, even if it's not the Canadiens and even if it's not live, which I find kind of ridiculous. If that's the actual NHL rule, I find it ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
So then technically the show Spaltante, where they do highlights every night.
Yeah, that should be blacked out too.
It should be, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe because it's only partially hockey and not 100% hockey. I don't know.
What about the Sylvie Fréchette thing? So
I asked about that. Apparently they've changed their schedule completely than what it was supposed to be because of all this stuff that's going on.
So things are getting blacked out in time slots of...
Right. So like they had programmed, okay, blackout from like on Wednesday from 2 to 4, regardless, right? No, and then they changed what was on Wednesday from 2 to 4, but they didn't remove the blackout.
Yeah.
So anyway,
the blackout rules, and I told you all about how lousy the MLB blackout rules are. The blackout rules are gonna, in the end, hurt all the professional sports more than they think it's helping. I know they think that they're trying to protect their little territories, but that's not the world in 2020. The world in 2020 is open. It's global. It's crossing borders. It's like if they want to black out games, they're hurting themselves, because that's the mentality of the 1970s where your fans were only in your city, and that's not the case anymore,
at least the NFL blackout rule, I can sort of understand that if they don't sell a certain percentage of tickets for that game, then they black out the game in that city because they want people who live there to buy a ticket. I sort of get that. I mean, I don't agree with it, but I understand the reasoning behind it. But
Yeah.
the NHL blackout rule is completely backwards because I live in Toronto, 550 kilometers away from the Bell Center. So it's not like I could just get into my car and go to the Bell Center to watch the game.
Right.
So why you're just hurting me for no reason?
Well, I guess is there a reason because they want you to watch the Leafs? Like they're like, no, sorry, you don't live in the city. You can't, like, you have to be a fan of another team now.
Well, no,
Right.
I can watch the Canadiens if I subscribe to the NHL Center Ice package or to the Montreal Canadiens package. I can do that.
Right.
So they obviously they want to make more money. There's no question. The answer to every question is money.
Correct. You are correct.
Anyway,
Ding, ding, ding.
so enough about that.
The National Hockey League.
Well, now that you're talking about hockey, could we talk about it for a sec? I do have a couple of NHL notes.
Go.
Gary Bettman seems to be on the same page as you.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't know. Like they came out this week and said, like how they can continue their season and all this,
Oh, you mean that he'd rather finish this season rather than start next season?
Well, like the consensus from the league is that they want to finish and they want to finish this year and then they'll figure out about next year.
Right.
Well, which I don't know if that's like, well, you know how I feel about that. I just think that all the talk about finishing this year is just that. It's talk. And I guess that's all they can do. I mean, if you're an executive in a league and you want to figure out how to save your league, but it's right now it's just talk, and I don't think it's realistic to think that they're going to finish their seasons.
It would be the one and only time that I've agreed with Gary Bettman in my life.
It's so true. But I was thinking about the NHL this week because I heard a segment on the radio and it got me thinking. I don't know do you think like every team can survive this? I was thinking about, can all the teams survive this in all the professional sports? And I think for the most part, the answer is yes. But when you get to the NHL, you have a couple of franchises that are sort of teetering, and like the loss of all this revenue, like they just may decide, like the Carolina Hurricanes could just decide we can't do this anymore.
Yeah, but I think, remember that season where there wasn't a season? It was like 10 years ago. There were no games at all.
Yeah.
So if those teams like Carolina survived that then they can survive this as well.
I guess, yeah. I hope they can. I was just thinking about like maybe they're just going to say this isn't worth our while anymore.
Well, you have to realize that
so much losses.
Every single owner in the NHL and any professional league is loaded beyond loaded. So I mean, the fact that he or she owns the team, that's like their side project.
I know, but think about how much money all these guys are losing in the time when the NHL that you mentioned, where there was no season. All those guys that own the teams, their other businesses were still making money.
Right.
And that might not be the case now. Right?
Not only that season that I referred to, I think it was 2004.
Yeah.
They weren't paying the players that year either.
Right. Now I don't know what they're doing.
I don't know what they're doing.
Like, I don't know. Like, I'm just, there's some owners that could be taking heavy losses in their other real businesses, and this side project of the team is now they're gonna look at it in a different way. I don't know. I'm just thinking about it. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the salary cap, especially in the NHL, because as you know, the cap is tied to revenue, right?
Yes.
So, obviously the revenue is going to be hugely lowered, and the experts are already saying that the NHL salary cap, no matter what happens, is going to be lowered by approximately 9 or 10 million, which is the maximum it could lower. Like there's a threshold of how much it could be lowered by. And when we do get back to hockey, some teams are going to be, there's teams, for example, the team in your market, the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are already at the cap and are already making very, very difficult decisions about what players to keep and what players to let go of based on their salary alone, not about performance. And if they have to lower their cap by 10 million, how is that going to affect these teams that are already at the cap? Like, it's going to be really, the league when it returns, some teams are going to be a little less recognizable. They're going to be really different.
Well, I don't know exactly how it works, but I do know that there isn't a maximum that you can pay a player. Like, you can pay a player whatever you want.
I think there might be a maximum,
But
now,
there is
or it's a maximum
length of
contract.
percentage
Yeah,
based on what the cap is.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
So what happens if they're paying a certain player like Ovechkin? He's getting the maximum percentage that he can get based on the cap as it is today. But then the cap gets lowered, as you say. Does he then have to take a lower salary? I don't know what the rule is there.
There's probably provisions there for this type of situation.
Because they assumed when they made these rules that the cap would either stay the same or go higher. They never assumed it would go lower.
Well, the cap is actually supposed to rise. They always work under the assumption that the cap is going to rise by a certain percentage. I think it's 5% every year, and it has.
But
right?
But it won't this year.
Well, no, this year it's going to like take a drastic move the other way. So. And like a team like the Canadiens, whose GM, because not because he's smart, because this is just what he did. The Canadiens have been routinely $5 to $7 million under the cap for the past 3 years, just because, like he said, I don't want to spend money just for the sake of spending money when we're kind of trying to rebuild. And now they're going to find themselves actually in a pretty advantageous position compared to other teams if the cap goes down. Well, when the cap goes down by the 9 or 10 million that it's going to.
Except that he was in a similar situation last offseason. He tried to sign a free agent, and you saw how that went.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
If there aren't any good players that are free agents available to sign, then having all this cap space doesn't really help.
Well, it will help him re-sign his current players that are going to get raises, as opposed to other teams that are actually going to have to sign their current players and release some,
True.
Yeah. I don't know. Just stuff to think about. This is what you think about. This is what I try to think about some sports to take my mind off of news, but there's really not much to talk about. I mean, that NBA horse competition was an utter joke, honestly.
Let me tell you what wasn't an utter joke.
Okay.
Major League Baseball.
I got to watch 2 Expos games this week.
Ah, brilliant. So you watched which 2? Oh, yeah. You watched the El Presidente El Perfecto?
Yes, I did.
And then you watched the Pedro perfect game, not perfect game?
Correct. And by the way, so the Pedro game, I'm going to go back and forth between both games, but the Pedro game, that was in 1995. And you may recall that after the 1994 season that didn't end, I basically boycotted baseball for about a decade.
You did?
I did. I don't know if you remember.
I know you did.
So anything that happened from 1995 to like the day of the Expos last game, I have no clue. Like, don't ask me anything from 1995 to 2003. Don't ask me anything because I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Right.
So I didn't even remember that Pedro Martinez game against the Padres. I remembered absolutely nothing about it because I never watched it at the time. It was interesting that the player who came through in the clutch, I didn't even know was on the Expos.
Who was that?
Jeff Treadway.
Oh, yeah, Jeff Treadway. They had a lot. 95 was like, that was dark times, right? They literally just let go of everybody. Everybody was gone from the team the previous year. And it was like a scrappy little bunch, with Roberto Kelly and all these guys.
Tony Tarasco.
Lou
Frazier.
Well, Lou Frazier, you know about Lou Frazier. I mean, he couldn't do anything except steal bases. That's all.
Well, wasn't that Otis Nixon?
Well, Lou Frazier was the same thing. It's just that he was even worse because he couldn't even field or throw.
And he was playing center field that game, I think.
And with his glasses.
Yes, that's right. And I don't know if you watched the game, but they didn't even show the Expos at bats. They only showed the Expos in the field.
Right, because they just wanted to show the Pedro part. They really condensed it.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was,
and a baseball writer pointed out, and I forget who it was. Maybe it wasn't a baseball writer. Maybe it was Neil Schnurback, our friend.
Okay, well, what did he point out?
Anyways, I saw it on Twitter. I think it was Neil. And he was saying the amazing thing about that game is Pedro basically threw fastballs the whole time. Fastballs and a little bit of sliders. And the Pedro that was the dominant, crazy, maybe the best 3 or 4 year span of any pitcher in history, Pedro, on the last year on the Expos, and then in 97 Expos, and then 98, 99, 2000, 2001 Red Sox. Pedro's best pitch was his changeup, and then he hadn't even developed that changeup yet in 95 on that game that you watched this week.
Yeah, and you can tell because they interviewed him after the game. He looks so young.
Oh yeah, he's a baby.
But the interesting thing, even though he pitched into the 10th inning, I don't even think he reached 100 pitches.
It's wild, no?
Like, I think he only threw 95 pitches, even though he went into the 10th inning.
Well, when you throw a perfect game, your pitch count is presumably pretty low, right? Because you're pitching, no one's getting on base.
You're pitching well. Now, the Dennis Martinez game,
yeah,
obviously that game I remember. And but what I didn't remember was that Gary Carter was on the Dodgers that year. Right.
That was a couple years later. He returned to the Expos just for a swan song there. But yeah, Carter bounced around after he left the Mets. He was on the Dodgers. I believe he was on the Giants as well at one point.
You're correct. Yes, I looked it up.
Yeah.
So those games were interesting. Now, tomorrow you can watch the Expos Phillies from October 1999, where Vlad hits his 40th homer. I don't even
really?
remember that because, again, I wasn't paying attention.
Is it his 40th homer, or is it the 40th homer that they call back?
I don't know. It just says in the notes, the show notes, it says October 1999, Vlad hits his 40th homer of the season. It was against the Phillies.
I'm going to watch that because there's one season, and look, I'm going to delete this if my stats are wrong.
Okay.
But there's the famous 40-40, like Vlad was going for 40-40.
That I recall.
And they got a call wrong. Like he basically, the last game of the season, he hit a homer that they called foul that was actually fair. That would have been the 40th home run. So I wonder if it's that game or maybe not. I don't know.
Okay, well, this was like early October, I think. So there were still...
Yeah, it's probably not it.
Actually, it might be it because it could have been the last regular season game of the season.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll watch it to find out. But that's just out of my memory, so.
And later this week, the other Expos game that they're showing is Expos Padres from August of 1999. And I'm not sure why they're showing this game. It's the game where Tony Gwynn gets his 3,000th hit.
Oh, okay. Well, they're just showing it, but I mean, that's not a thing to do with the Expos.
Exactly. Yeah. So speaking of classic baseball games, before I got rid of the MLB Network from my cable package, I was watching the 1982 World Series.
Yeah.
And for
Cardinals Brewers.
Yes. For some reason, I don't know why, but the 1982 World Series is the one that I remember more than any other World Series I've ever watched in my life. I don't know why.
Well, I remember it very well also. I don't know if it's more than any other, but I know more about the 1982 season than any person should.
Like I could name you the starting lineup for both the Brewers and the Cardinals even before I watched that game 2 days ago or 3 days ago.
Right.
Which is weird. Like, why would I know that? But I do.
I know why I know that, but I don't know why you know that. But
I think
because we had this really big Stratomatic league when I was in grade 8. And it was the 1982 season set that we used. So I know all those cards, which is basically every player in the league. I know them back and forth and sideways. Like it's unreal. It's like I said, I know that season much more than any person should.
So I don't know if you watched any of it this week, but
I didn't. But I know that which is the game that they showed? Game 2 or Game 1?
Well, they showed I think Game 6 and 7. They might have showed other games. I only watched Game 6 and 7. But let me tell you, Game 7. So the Cardinals win, and it's in St. Louis.
It's Joaquin Andujar pitch, no?
I don't even remember who started the game, but the funniest thing was right like seconds after the last out is made.
Yeah.
It seemed like every single fan that was in the stands was on the field within seconds.
Yeah,
like you don't see that. You don't see that anymore.
No, now there's much better security.
Yeah.
But yeah, you do see that. Well, you see it in college basketball games.
College basketball, yes, because basketball is a different story. But this is like the entire baseball field was filled with fans, and the players had to like sort of run into the dugout. They couldn't even celebrate on the field.
There's one home run that I saw this week. in one of those classic games. It was Chris Chambliss. It was a 77 or 78 ALCS, and he hit a home run against the Royals and for the Yankees. And he also, like, they had to escape the field after he hit the home run because the fans went nuts. They all came in the field, and they were talking about how to this day they're not sure if he actually ever touched home plate, but it doesn't matter.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah. And they interviewed him, and he said basically, like, now he said, like, he didn't touch home plate and he went back out after and he touched it. But, like, that would have been too late anyways, you know?
Well, he kind of broke
Talk about breaking your baseline.
Yeah, exactly. You know? I was going to say. Now,
pretty wild, no?
By the way, you mentioned Stratomatic. I'm glad you brought it up. You know, you told me a few weeks ago that Mark told you about what the Globe and Mail is doing.
Yeah, so it came to its conclusion, the 94 Expos versus the 93 Jays for all the marbles.
Correct, but before we say who won the whatever series they're calling it,
it has a name actually.
A McDonald Cartier series? I don't know. Who knows?
No, hold on. I just read it. I think you're right. Something weird. The McDonald Cartier Cup. How did they come up with that? I don't know, but whatever.
So I don't know if you've had the same issue as me. When I try to read a story on Globe and Mail, after I've read like 3 articles, it tells me I have to sign up. I can't read anymore. Do you have that problem?
Yes.
So anyway, I can read the headlines, so I know who won, but I wasn't able to read the story about it.
Well, I mean, they really jazz it up in the story with a lot of stuff. You know, they have an interview with Kevin Malone, the GM of the Expos. They talk about all kinds of stuff. They have like fake interviews and fake facts about the game. It's really like involved, you know. So anyway, so the Expos, the 94 Expos, did win the series 4-2. I
was very happy to see that.
Yeah, which is, I mean, look, nothing against the 93 Jays. I mean, 93 Jays were a super powerhouse, and other than this, I mean, everybody would definitely consider them the greatest Jays team, greatest Canadian team in history. I mean, they were loaded top to bottom, their lineup, you know. But I'm glad that in Stratomatic version, the Expos came out on top, because that's, like we said, and we you know, I'm sure we've talked about this ad nauseum in the previous 177 episodes or 178 episodes. 94 Expos were a team that every history sort of forgotten, you know, like that team was loaded. It was great. And unfortunately, we'll never really know how it would have ended.
So do you have a subscription to the Globe and Mail?
No, but somehow I was able to get this article.
Okay.
Pedro Martinez pitched a complete game, struck out 9 in the game 6.
Oh, very nice.
And they chased Dave Stewart in the second inning. Actually, Marquise Grissom led off the game with a home run, and Cliff Floyd followed with a home run. So they hit 2 home runs in the first 2 at-bats.
By the way, you mentioned Kevin Malone. I forgot to mention that during that Pedro Martinez game that I was watching this week, where he pitched into the 10th inning, Kevin Malone had come into the broadcast booth, I think in the 3rd inning or something of that game.
Yeah.
As they do sometimes. And he was going to talk to, you know, Dave Van Horn and Ken Singleton for an inning. And because Pedro was throwing a perfect game, Malone didn't want to leave his seat to jinx anything. So he actually stayed there the entire game.
Oh, wow. That's funny.
Anyway.
So like I said, it's well written, these Globe articles, right? I don't know who's writing them, but it says like basically that, you know, Grissom hit a home run off of Dave Stewart, and then the next hitter, Cliff Floyd, followed with a dinger to left field. And somehow they know that it was off the foul pole. Like, I don't think they make up these details, but and then it says, listen to this. It says the Expos were up 2-0 before television broadcaster Don Chevrier had the time to tell his audience that any rebroadcast, retransmission, or account of the game without express written consent of Major League Baseball is prohibited.
I love that.
Yeah, very clever. Like honestly, kudos to the Globe Mail for their, and actually it does have the writer. His name is Brad Wheeler.
Yes, I was going to say that. I was going to tell you.
Congratulations on this series because it was entertaining.
And Brad Wheeler writes about things other than sports as well, in case you're wondering.
Oh, I didn't know. I mean, I never read the Globe, so I don't know. That's all I got, Josh.
College basketball.
I got to mention one basketball note.
Oh, let's do it.
So you know how every week it seems I tell you about a different Duke player who decides to go into the NBA draft?
Yeah.
So this week I'm going to tell you that Wendell Moore Jr. and Matthew Hurt have decided to return to Duke for next season.
Awesome. That's great news.
It's rare to hear. It's rare to hear that kind of news.
Matthew Hurt seems like a talented player who had a sort of up and down year because he at times you saw him and you're like, wow, this guy's like going to be a star, and then other games you just wouldn't even notice him; he'd just disappear. And Wendell Moore is also an interesting player because he's super athletic. Like he's just like a physical specimen, you know? So I think he can really, I don't know if he has an NBA future at all. Maybe that's why he's coming back to the league, to the Duke, but seems like he could be a very, very good college player.
So I wanted to ask you, I know that you don't like the World Cup of Hockey, and I know you don't like the World Baseball Classic. I mentioned this because TVA Sports was showing some old games, World Cup of Hockey games, and I just happened to be flipping around and I saw them. So I know you don't have any interest in either of those.
Yeah.
But what I don't know is why you don't like them.
Well, because they bill themselves like they're hyped up as a kind of best on best tournament, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the purpose of these international competitions is to see like whose country is best at a particular sport. And that's not what you get with these tournaments, you know? The World Baseball Classic, well, look, let's start with hockey because I guess it's a little bit closer to best on best. You know, not all the best players are there. The players are it's more conditioning. It's just, you know, after we've already had a taste of the Olympics, and then, you know, we can go back to Canada Cup and stuff like this. The World Cup of Hockey just seems like a gimmick. And then baseball's even worse because it's basically spring training. You know, like it's not even like the players are not even at their how can you say that this is like a best on best tournament when Russell Martin is playing shortstop?
Yeah, I don't think he actually did play shortstop. He wanted to, but they didn't let him. Yes, I know what you mean. But I mean, in their defense, they scheduled it before the season. Like they scheduled the World Baseball Classic before the regular season started, and they scheduled the World Cup of Hockey before the regular season started. When else were they going to schedule it?
Well, I mean, look, in the case of hockey, the answer is obvious. And that hockey made the decision to not send players to the Olympics and to do this instead, which was maybe the right thing to do financially, or maybe they had other reasons. But for the fans who want to see the best possible best on best tournament, that's not what we got, right?
I think in
that's
hockey,
just not what we got.
In my opinion, in hockey, the best players were there, unless if a guy was injured, which, I mean, you can't control that. Yeah. The best players actually did play. The only problem with the World Cup of Hockey was that they made up these two teams that were just made up teams.
Yeah.
But if you take away those two teams that were made up teams and you had the other 6 countries, those 6 countries did have their best possible lineups.
But do you think that the players were going all out, that it meant as much, you know?
Well, it probably didn't mean as much as the Olympics, but I will say this. The advantage of having it before the season started is the players were well rested. Like, it wasn't like they did it, you know, in June after a long, grueling season when a bunch of players are injured or whatever. Yeah. You know,
well, I mean, that's what they used to do with the Canada Cup too, right? It was at that time also. So it's I can't fault them as much, you know, the NHL. But but for baseball, like, I mean, but the thing is, like I told you, like we had the right formula to see the best on best national tournament, and the NHL, in all its infinite wisdom, just said, no, we're not doing that. You know?
Now with the World Baseball Classic, I believe this to be true, and this is just my opinion. Other than the United States team, I think all the other countries had their best possible lineup.
That may be true. It may not be true. I don't know. But I mean, if you really want to win, and it can't mean as much to the fans if it doesn't mean that much to the players, right? So if your starting pitcher is only pitching 3 innings because it's a spring training game, then it doesn't mean as much as it should. Then that's telling you that right there, right?
Right. No, I agree. I mean, because, well, every team had a really good roster, so, you know, they had probably every single pitcher on their roster was an all-star, right?
Yeah.
So you can afford to go, you know, 3 different pitchers, 3 innings each, and you're not losing anything by doing that.
Yeah. But I mean, we never had a best on best in baseball other than this. So I guess if I'm going to like try to look at the other side, I mean, at least they're doing something, right?
You know that in the next Summer Olympics, there's supposed to be baseball.
Well, baseball was a demonstration sport in the Olympics for quite a few years.
It's an actual sport in the next Summer Olympics. Now, I don't know which players are going to actually be able to play because it's during the baseball season.
Oh yeah, that's right. Who's going to go? In the past, the problem with when it was a demonstration sport is the teams were basically college and minor league players, no?
Right, and it might be the same this time because the Summer Olympics are during the baseball season, so you're screwed.
Right.
Anyway.
I love that little discussion there, Josh. I didn't expect to talk about that.
I didn't expect to talk about it either.
Before we sign off, remember, you can listen and subscribe to new and archived episodes of the Skip and Josh podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and of course, Spotify. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We would love to hear from you via email, skipandjoshshow@gmail.com, via Twitter @skipandjosh, or by liking and following our Facebook page. As always, you can get all the links to everything I just talked about on our website, skipandjosh.com.
We leave you with this.
So what do you have to end the show with? I don't have very much.
Okay, I have one thing. Well, it's actually one thing with 4 parts.
Oh, God. Okay.
So this past Wednesday, you're aware of this. I know you're aware of this, but the listeners are not aware of this. This past Wednesday, April 15th, was a significant day for 4 reasons.
Okay.
Reason number 1.
I am aware of this. Yes, I am aware of this.
Well, 4 reasons. Reason number 1.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be tax day in the United States, but it's been postponed because of this pandemic.
Correct.
Reason number 2, it was the 73rd anniversary of the first Major League Baseball game that Jackie Robinson played.
Huge.
Reason number 3, Tony Kornheiser read one of my emails on his show.
I couldn't believe it. I texted you saying, was that you?
And by the way, that's the 3rd time I've had an email read on his show, and every time you hear it before I do, and then you tell me about it before I get to hear it myself.
Well, because last time he read something that said Josh from Toronto, and I said, is this you? And you said, no, that wasn't me. So I was like, so I really actually expected this time for you to say, no, that wasn't me also.
Well, this time it was.
Yeah.
And then finally, the 4th important thing that happened on Wednesday, April 15th, was that you celebrated your 50th birthday. So happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Josh. I really appreciate that. Yeah. I'm old. I'm officially old.
I'm not officially old yet. I will be in about a few months.
Beautiful. I don't really have anything for the end here other than, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to, like, get a haircut? Like, how are you going to manage, like, getting a haircut?
So it's funny that you ask, because before all this happened, and I didn't know that it was going to happen, I actually did get a haircut right before all this happened. And so I'm good for, like, another month probably.
Yeah. I'm wondering, like, what's going to happen because, like, people are going to start getting really scruffy.
Well,
you know?
If you saw me, you'd say, not getting scruffy. I already am scruffy.
Yeah. Well, me too. Yeah, I haven't properly shaved in a while. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I know you're a huge fan of Better Call Saul.
Yes.
And I know you're a couple seasons behind where they currently are. But there was so much stuff on social media this week about Better Call Saul and how amazing this season was. And people are talking about it like it's literally like one of the greatest shows ever. I actually heard one of the Montreal radio personalities in the morning show say that he thinks it's the best show that he's ever watched. So it's like, okay, wow, maybe I need to get on this Better Call Saul. Like you finally watched Ozark because I recommended it. So maybe I will get on the Better Call Saul bandwagon. Yeah, train.
So it's interesting because, I mean, I really, really liked season 4. That's the last season I've seen. I can't imagine that 5 or 6 are better than 4.
Apparently they are. I don't know. I have no basis to tell you yes or no other than what I've heard, but apparently they're spectacular.
So I'm considering, I told you I changed my cable package. I'm considering adding AMC as one of my a la carte channels, just so I could watch season 5.
Good idea. Okay. I think I might do the same. Maybe I should do the same.
Well, watch the first 4 seasons first.
Yeah, I guess you're right. All right. I'll talk to you next week.
Okay.